In any life, we have highs and lows, light and dark, wins and losses. What happens when we encounter that moment in time when what happens next could change everything? Join us as we step into another person's inspirational moment and see how we can connect their experience to ours. This is Greg Stevens, and you're listening to A Shot of Inspiration. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Shot of Inspiration. We have a really good friend of mine from back in my Baylor years, a gentleman that I've been really good friends with for a long time. And also we've got my friend Phillip Viccinelli, and Phil is an entrepreneur here in Austin, Texas. And how I actually met Phil was when I was in college, my last semester. I stayed an extra semester at Baylor, and I had one class in real estate that was 8 o'clock from 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, only Monday, Wednesday, Friday class I had. And I didn't make it a lot. It was so early. But Phil pretty much made it to every class, but I would come in from time to time and got to know him a little. But my very last final, it was my last final at Baylor, needed to study all night for it. And I really got tired around 2 o'clock. I thought, well, I'll take a 2-hour nap. Ended up waking up, the sun was up, and I looked, and my final was starting at 8. It was 8:45 already. I just jumped on my bike, got to the building, rushed in, and everyone's taking the test. The professor's not there, but there was a stack of papers on his desk, and I grabbed one. I thought it was the test, and I looked at it, and everyone, and they thought maybe it was the answers, but it was actually the test. I said, no, it's what he has there on the board. I said, I can't believe this. I've got to graduate tomorrow. I can't believe I overslept. Everyone starts kind of laughing. We go through, I'm so shaken. Phil shows me, he kind of says, calm down, dude, just relax and start writing, because it was all an essay. It was 7 questions, I think, and it was just essay, no multiple choice.
It was impossible for the guy to even grade it. There's no time.
It was terrible. And so I calmed down a little, and then I got to writing. And at the end of class, it was about 10 minutes till it was finished. The professor came in, he goes, y'all got about 10 minutes. No one had left because everyone's still writing. And he left, and about 5 minutes later, this guy rushes in and he says, where is he? I overslept. I graduate tomorrow. And the whole class just bust out laughing because it happened to 2 of us. And I had nightmares about that for years, that I never graduated because I missed that one class. So Phil, thanks for helping me out that day.
We'll know that that's a debt that's impossible to pay. So I'll always have that on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to Austin, I had a friend named Greg Reynolds, and Greg actually said, we've got a friend of ours, Phil Viccinelli. I'm going to pick him up, go to the lake today. I was like, I know that name from somewhere. And the door opened, and it was Phil. So from that point on, we became fast friends and did a lot of things together. But one of the reasons I wanted to have Phil on was Phil has been an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He's taken on many different businesses, and so we'll talk about, they're really not sexy businesses. He's had a model of creating these businesses and selling them off and helping people along the way. I always thought that was inspirational, because he wasn't just out there developing something for himself. As he was developing these businesses, he found people who were consistently loyal and hard workers, and he helped them up to actually begin their own business or take over his business. And as he sold those to them, giving them opportunities they may never have had. So Phil, welcome to the show, and tell audience a little about yourself, where you grew up, how we got here, and also some of the businesses you actually have run and helped other people purchase from you.
Well, Greg, quite an intro. Like I said earlier, if I'm one that inspires you, you must have the bar set pretty low, because it's been a wild ride that we've been on. And first of all, what struck me when you told me an entrepreneur is that I don't really know I even agree with that. I mean, in my mind, there's an entrepreneur and then there's a businessman. And an entrepreneur is somebody that takes a brand new idea and does things differently. I don't think anything I've ever done is revolutionary. It's all just It's basic, unsexy ways to make a buck.
Right. Right.
For me, it started early. I mean, I was 15 years old living in Rockport, Texas, and had it's close to 30 yards that I mowed. You know, after basketball practice, on the weekends, just worked all the time, mowing grass, doing odd jobs, never an idle time.
Right.
Got to Baylor. You know, the summer before in Rockport, not only was I mowing yards, but I was working in a fish house. And that we would unload the shrimp boats and package the shrimp into these 100-pound crates and ice them down and throw them on the 18-wheeler and send them off to market. Well, I got to Baylor. I printed up some business cards. You know, I was living in Rockport at the time, which is a little town down by the coast, by Port Aransas. So I had some business cards printed up with just my name and phone number. I remember going to Waco. The first thing I did, well, the first thing I did, that's a whole nother story. But the first day I had an opportunity to go, I went and drove around and found the biggest houses in Waco. It was all down by the lake, mansions. Just walked up to the front door of each of these houses, knocked on the door and introduced myself. I said, hey, my name's Phillip. I'm a freshman at Baylor this year. I worked in a fish house down in Rockport this summer. I'm headed to the house this weekend. What can I bring you? So I was taking people's orders. I was bringing shrimp, oysters, crabs, fish, bringing all this stuff back. I had a 1966 Mustang at the time, and I had ice chests all in the back seat, all in the trunk. So I'm running outlaw seafood from the coast to people's houses in Waco.
How have I never heard this?
You didn't know that? Yeah, and Kevin Prather and I, we got a job at the Waco Tribune Herald, selling newspaper subscriptions over the phone and door to door. At night, Prather and I started a cleaning service where we cleaned people's apartments and professors' apartments, and we called it the Cleaning Geeks. And you remember Prather, don't you? Big boat up. Yeah. We had a little flyer, and it was a picture of him looking like Jack LaLanne, all bowed up, and our motto was, "A hard man is good to find."
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, we did, always working, always doing something.
Right.
Got out of college, I thought I was going to be a real estate mogul, so I had a real estate degree. Got out of Baylor in 80, when did we graduate? 86?
I graduated 85. You were, we were.
Yeah. I was a year behind you. I got out in 86, came to Austin, thought I was going to be a commercial real estate broker. Nobody was doing anything in 86. It was a horrible time. The oil business went down, the S&L crisis. Nobody was doing real estate deals. People were jumping off buildings because they were losing everything they accumulated in their lifetime. It was a horrible time. So I worked for 2 different real estate companies for 2 years. And the only way, I never made a nickel, straight commission, never made a dime. I supported myself mowing yards. Here I am out of Baylor University. At 5 o'clock, I'm out there mowing yards to pay the rent, and for beer money, obviously. Living in a $300 a month studio apartment down by UT. I don't know how anybody, $300 now for rent, that seems crazy, but that's what it was. So I'm mowing yards, not making a dime, thinking something's got to change here because it's just not real comfortable. It's not what I'd bargained for. So I answered an ad in what was called the Green Sheet back in the day, and the Austin Classifieds. There was actually a day when you could go in and find a job in the newspaper. So somebody was looking for a real estate appraiser researcher. So I'd taken one appraisal class. I was a real estate major at Baylor and took all the real estate classes, how we met, but one of them was appraisal. Talk about boring. Here's this form. Here, you fill out this form to appraise a house. I mean, it's just the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. I had to sit through that class at Baylor. But when times are tough, you do what you have to do. So I got working for a residential appraiser at night, filling out these forms and learning that business, and realized, well, dang, it's not hard. The guy makes a lot of money. So I looked in the paper again. I thought, well, I need to do this full time, but I don't really know if residential is the way to go. Answered an ad in the paper for 2 guys leading a commercial researcher at an appraisal company. Went down there, interviewed for that, started the next week with those guys. And I think I was with that company maybe 8 or 9 years. Wow. It was 100% commission. I think I had a little salary to start with, to learning the ropes, but within 6 months, I was writing my own reports, commercial appraisal reports, going through all the educational. The Appraisal Institute had all these courses for the appraisers, and you had to do all this to get this MAI designation, at which point you could go out and start your own company and banks would give you work, and it was basically your qualifications. But that process of going through the Appraisal Institute education was so much better. It was such a better education than Baylor.
Right.
Baylor was
well, the thing is
didn't learn anything, and nobody ever asked me when I got a job. Nobody ever asked where I went to college. Nobody wanted to see a transcript. Nobody ever. I'm not going to say it was worthless. I think it was just a stepping stone to prove you could actually accomplish something. You could actually show up and pass it to class.
Right.
I think that's all college was for me.
Okay.
Started appraising, started making money. It was great, and I realized, the more you work, the more money you can make.
Right.
But what also came to light during that time was, I got sick one time, so I'd stay home for a couple of days. I didn't make any money.
Woke you up, didn't it?
Yeah. I don't know, working for somebody else on a salary was never really for me. Mm-hmm. I like the more I work, the more I make. I guess it started early with yards and
right.
You're relying on yourself, not somebody else to dole out an hourly wage. That's never really made sense to me. I couldn't live in a corporate situation or work for the government, or I can't do that.
Right. You value autonomy. And I'm the same way. I worked, for some large organizations and some smaller ones, but I didn't feel free until I went out on my own. I'll never forget when I took a job, my first job out of Baylor. I was hired October before I graduated in December. And all my friends, when I said I just accepted a job, I start in January, I hadn't even graduated. Everyone said, wow, that's great. How do you feel? And I said, I feel like I've just been sentenced to prison.
Right. And
they went, really? I said, yeah, I don't know why. I just didn't know. I thought I'd be elated. And then I worked in corporate America for all those years. And then in 99, when I decided to go out on my own, the day I left and went and started my own business, that day, that feeling that I'd had, that I didn't realize it had been with me the entire time. It was underneath, but I felt free again because I was working for myself. And that's when I realized I needed to be autonomous in what I'm doing. I need to have a say. I need to do those things. And that's just how I'm designed as well. Yeah. Well, let me ask you real quick. I want to share with.
Let's back up. Let me ask you something, and I don't want to go too deep too quick here. Yeah. But if you felt like you were being sentenced to prison by taking this job, do you think maybe unconsciously you were sabotaging yourself by sleeping it through our final? I'd rather sleep through the final than go to jail.
That's probably true. I never thought about that until you just said it, but that could have been there. I thought it was great because I'm going to have a job. I'm out of school. And again, that job wasn't what I need to have a whole podcast on really bad jobs and how we overcome them.
Yeah, I got fired from McDonald's, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I wanted to hear about some of the ventures that you've done, the things you've sold off, also, the fireworks, everything. I'd love to walk people through how you created your businesses, some of the struggles you went through, and also some of the people you helped along the way.
Okay. Let's go back to when you and I were living in the house for wayward boys.
Exactly.
I know you remember that. That was a lot of fun. I guess I had just gone through a divorce. You had gone through a divorce. It was kind of the He-Man's Women Haters Club over at your house.
We were bruised and battered at that point in our lives. Emotionally. There was no doubt about that. Yeah.
A couple of soiled doves. I guess at that point I was appraising real estate and looking for something else to do. I guess that light had come on that if I needed to find something that was going to generate money even when I wasn't working. Mm-hmm. So I was appraising real estate, ran. One of the beauties about that is, you're in the car, you're calling on signs all the time. You kind of know what the market is, ran across a piece of land on 620 that seemed to be underpriced based upon my gut and my, just experience. Yeah. So I got the guys at work, my dad, we all threw in I think it was $150,000 to buy this corner up on 620. We all went in together. So we do this joint venture. We buy this piece of property. Within 3 months, we had sold the corner off to Texaco for more than we had paid for the entire tract. So we had 2 more lots that we had subdivided that off for that guy and had 2 more lots. That's when I met you. Right. So not met you, but that's when I was living with you. So right. A guy calls out of the blue one day, guy named Zach, and he wants to lease the property that's not sold off to Texaco to put a fireworks stand on. So, well, whatever you want to do, guy, just write a check. Come on. Anyway, I got to know Zach over the years. Hell of a guy, great mentor, like just an inspirational guy for me. 10 years older, we were still best of friends. He kind of helped me get in the fireworks business. I was real attracted to that. And, he was sharing with me the numbers and the ratios and there's a lot of money to be made in fireworks. And he agreed to help me set me up in that business as long as we weren't competing. So basically I had to be outside of Austin and right. I went out to West Texas and found a little piece of land in Colorado City. Yeah. You know where that is.
I used to live in Big Spring, so yeah, I do.
Yeah. Colorado City, the demographics were good, that had enough population. I found the first legal corner or legal site outside the city limits. It wasn't for sale, it wasn't for lease. I just looked up the tax rolls, found the owner, went to him, said, "Hey, I want to buy your acre here. Would you sell it to me?" So, "Well, we never thought of that." I said, "Yeah, we'll sell it to you for $4,000. So, well, that's great. I don't have any money. But they owner financed that land for me.
That's awesome.
Zach sold me one of his old rickety wood fireworks stands. We moved it out there. We set it up. After the first season, so I was sat in that fireworks stand for 10 days in July in West Texas. It's 120 degrees with tarantulas crawling around and scorpions. It was sold fireworks, paid the land off and paid the stand off. And, next season I had 3 fireworks stands.
Right.
So that kind of started that. And then Zach did that for me. That was a big thing for me. I learned that lesson, that was invaluable.
Right.
At which point, about that time, Greg Reynolds called, and he had the job out at River Place, which was a subdivision out at 2222 and 620, big, like 1,200 acres, had a Tom Kite design golf course, had its own municipal utility district, big homeowners association, custom lots, production lots, office, retail space up by the front. It was a huge deal. Well,
and there wasn't one house out there yet at that time.
Oh, it was horrible. It was Vegas. It was the Wild West.
Yeah, it was.
But they were doing some development deals, and Greg called me one day. He said, "I've got to go. I need to leave this job and go help my dad with his building company because I'm going to take that company over one day." And he goes, "What do you think about my job?" I said, "Greg, you got the best job of anybody I know. What are you talking about?" And he said, No, Phil, what do you think about my job? You taking my job. It never dawned on me. So I went and interviewed with his boss. Ended up getting the job. So at that point, and that was a salary position. So I was on the cusp of, I'd gone out to Sacramento with a guy named Scott Beebe, who had hired me at the appraisal company, and we were going to move to Sacramento and start an appraisal company. And there was just something that wasn't quite right about that. I didn't do it. Maybe it was California. I don't know. but I took the job at River Place and realized that I can't, and it was a salary plus commission. And I had I wasn't married at the time. I was still single, but I knew that to devote the time needed to be an effective employee and take that responsibility on it there. I really couldn't be jacking around dealing with fireworks.
Right.
you know, and all that. Oh, before that, before the fireworks even started, I was appraising in laundromats. Yeah, laundromat business. Okay, so that was another thing I wanted to get into. And I don't know if it's an Italian cash, I want a cash business type of thing or what it was, but every time one of these things would come up for sale in the American Statesman under businesses for sale, I would go and act like I was wanting to buy their laundromat. Well, I didn't have any money. I didn't know the laundromat business from squat. I just went and looked at the books and realized, you know, okay, this is the ratio that they pay for rent. Here's the income. Here are the expenses as a percentage of sales, and, you know, trying to figure out the business. Well, one of them came for sale where I lived. And it was an old quick wash store at the corner of Woodrow and Koenig. Okay. And I was living on Crestview, right down the road from there. And I went to the people, worked out a deal. They took all their equipment out. I bought the boiler and the bulkhead and all the, you know, plumbing fixtures and everything. Went to Speed Queen. Quick Wash moved their equipment out of the place. I moved mine in within 48 hours. We're reopened with all brand new equipment, you know, brand new business. It was the first digital readout laundry equipment in Austin. And that was, digital readout is where you can see digitally how much the price is, how much time's left. It used to be you had to put the little quarters in the slot, and like
yeah. Right.
But anyway, I opened that store, and that was quite a revelation to me. It was scary. I mean, it was horrifying. I remember borrowing close to $100,000 back in the day, and that was more than I paid for my house.
Wow.
So here I am, you know, new venture, really don't know much about it. Got all this debt. I would wake up at 3, and this was back in the day when they weren't front load machines. They were all the old timey top load machines. And I would wake up at 3 in the morning and drive down to the store because I was afraid somebody was backing their truck up to the front door and stealing all this equipment. I mean, for months, I was just living, just so much stress.
Right.
But anyway, you know, get up in the morning at 5 o'clock, go down there and clean the store in the evening, take the phone calls from people still working.
Right.
You know, and then realized, I don't know, had a lot going on. But anyway, interviewed for the job, realized that I couldn't stay in the fireworks business, the laundry business, and be a productive employee.
Right.
So ended up selling out of the fireworks business, sold everything off. That didn't take very long at all, and was out at River Place probably 7 or 8 years.
That long? I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, it was great. It was wonderful. And in that time, still had this laundromat on the side. I was taking care of it in the morning. And then got married. We lived in that little house out there. It was great. Still working at River Place, and River Place was winding down. Ended up rolling into the, you know, I guess the manager of the entire subdivision toward the end, selling everything out. It's a great place out there now. And I'm kind of proud to have been involved with it early on. But took a job with the same guys that owned River Place doing another subdivision out in Salado. So I would drive up 183. I was living in River Place with new bride and new family, living in River Place, driving up to Salado every day up 183. And I thought, you know, I want to do another laundromat, but this time I want to control my own destiny, because I'd heard stories in the laundromat business of operators at some point their leases expires. And the guy that owns the building thinks, well, I'm just going to be in the laundromat business now, because all I do have to do is go by and pick up quarters. So I've heard stories of operators getting kicked out of their buildings and losing their business. And I thought, I don't want to do that. Maybe I'm a control freak, but I kind of wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. So I found a piece of property up in Leander, right across the street from the post office. Ended up buying that, designing a building, got the building built, started the laundromat. So here I am. I got one on Woodrow, one in Leander, working full time up north. It was great. A couple of years later, I designed that one in Leander where we could add a car wash to it, stuck a 3-bay self-serve car wash on it, people washing their cars, washing their clothes, hanging out. It was great. Job in Salado, worked myself out of that job and had an opportunity to move to Houston with the same guys that worked at River Place and this other thing with. So went to Houston, took the family and left. It was a great opportunity. I had 2 laundromats I had to do something with. So I ended up selling them to the people that worked for me. So what happened was I was in a position where I had the equipment paid off. There's no debt on them, and I could actually go in there and I owner financed the businesses, not the real estate, but the businesses. These people were, I had worked my way at the Woodrow store. I had a local guy that I knew, that he was in there cleaning and taking care of everything, and ended up selling it to him on time. He made monthly payments, paid it off. It worked out great. The one in Leander, I had a woman that worked for me there. She ended up buying that one from me,
Right.
And it worked out well.
So let me ask you on those, when you were doing that, you wouldn't just sell it to anyone. They had to be consistent, loyal, someone you could trust. Tell me about how you find that. I mean, because I know that you've also been through so many hires and have to let go, finding good people to be able to depend on. Tell me a little about how do you tend to find people that are self-starters like those people who bought those companies?
Yeah, I don't know if I actually go out and find them. They kind of come to me. I mean,
Okay.
you hire enough of them, you kind of get a gut feeling. You give them an opportunity to screw up. And if they don't, and they prove that they're loyal and hardworking and industrious and have a clue, and you feel like they can learn the business, but it's not an overnight deal. It took several years of getting comfortable with these people before we could do that. But it wasn't like that was my plan. I was kind of backed into that because I had to move to Houston. I couldn't do this. I couldn't run these businesses long distance. So I had to do something.
Right.
And that's how that was kind of the nexus of my model.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just came out of necessity, but then it gave you a philosophy around it.
Yeah, the light came on.
Right.
That's the aha moment, I guess,
right.
for this particular aspect of life, was that it worked. And I'm not going to say I'm some kind of magnanimous guy that wants to go out. My whole goal is to go help people. Yeah, I like to help people, but it was also a good deal for me too. Yeah. I mean, I sold it. There were no brokerage fees or commissions to be paid. There were really no negotiating on the price. It's here's the numbers, here's what you're going to pay me every month for the next so many years. And it's going to be your business. Yeah. And you're going to control your own destiny, just like I did by doing this. And, right. The light comes on for them too. And hopefully they pass that along and do it for the next person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened to me after that, I moved to Houston for a few years. That whole deal, that's a whole nother podcast episode on that cluster.
We'll address that one. Needless to say, folks, it was something that didn't go well at all.
Oh, not a bit.
But here's the thing, he came out on the other side of it. We won't even go into that. But
that whole show happened. My guy that hired me at River Place, who is still one of my very best friends. Right. That's another thing. I don't ever burn bridges with people. Like, everybody I've always worked with, I can go have a beer with them or go meet them for lunch right now. And, there's no reason.
Right.
But anyway, so I go in and say, guys, this whole deal's going to hell. Y'all don't need me. I'm going back to Austin. And Bill, the guy that hired me at River Place, who's still my partner, it's a bunch of stuff. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, Bill, but it's not going to be in Houston. He goes, well, figure out what you want to do and I'll back you. Wow. So I came back to Austin during the week. I took the city map, had it on a board, that poster board, and I drove every street from Georgetown to San Marcos that was a commercial street, not residential streets, but all the major roads. And on that map, I had a pin and a Excel spreadsheet of every laundromat. I think there were 86 of them at the time, from Georgetown to San Marcos. So I had a spreadsheet of how big was the store, who owned the store, what type of machines they had, what they charged, what their wash and fold, the condition, just got all this information. It's like, where could I go to compete and where should I not go to compete? Right. So at that point, it took several months to get all that together. I'm doing my demographic studies and figuring all this stuff out. And all of a sudden, at one point we got 3 pieces of land bought to build laundromats. So I guess it was 2010, we opened 2 stores under the Washatopia logo. We were a brand, rather. There's one on Pond Springs, Anderson Mill at Pond Springs Road, one in downtown Georgetown. Boom, we're back living in Brushy Creek, up kind of where we used to live. Yeah. And I'm running these stores and it's all me. There's no other income. There's no nothing. It's me running these 2 stores, and we own the real estate, we own the business. And it was a wild time too. And I've told you this story before. I remember, you talk about scary, going off on your own. I remember at one point, my dad was living in Austin And he came to the Georgetown store just to keep me company when we first opened it. And of course, when I say we, it was me and my wife. We were the only ones working. We couldn't afford any help. We spent every penny we could, and we were all, it's all on the line, man.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting in that store with my dad, completely vacant store. And I just said, Dad, I don't know if I've just blown it. I said, my break even to keep the doors open every day, I've got to do $1,000 worth of business just to pay the bills. And I said, we brought in $200 yesterday. I said, this is not working out. But
20% of what you needed.
yeah, and I just, and every store is different, how long it takes to ramp up, but it all worked out, and it all worked out. But I'm just saying, going off on your own, there's some scary times to do it. You have to be prepared for that.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. So long story short, built those two. We had a third one we were going to do. Bill and I were partners in the real estate 50-50. I was the laundromat guy. I was the tenant. So I owned the business. I rented the building from our entity that was the real estate entity. 2 stores was all I could do. I couldn't, I had all these employees. I have 2 daughters, and all of a sudden I've got 15 other women that think I'm their daddy, and I'm just dealing with everybody's personal stuff. I just running businesses. It was too much for one person,
Right.
And my wife was doing all the books, and it was hard. So ended up deciding, didn't do the 3rd building, and it was over at MLK in Springdale. So we didn't do it. So I had those 2 buildings and 2 stores. Ended up getting that equipment paid off and selling those stores. So what happened in Georgetown was the girl that bought that store, young girl, the job, she had just moved to Georgetown rather, had a baby, unwed mother, in her mid-20s. She went to work. She was the first person I hired. Smartest, hardest working woman, great, I'd say kid, great woman. Okay. Ended up selling the store to her. Okay. She paid it off last year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She paid off that store. And as part of it, had a handshake agreement with her that if you ever pay off this business, we'll look at selling you the real estate. So last July, Tommy bought her building. Bill and I financed the building for her. So we got a 20-year note. That's kind of our retirement.
Right.
Tom, it's changed her world. No single woman, and I don't mean this sexist wise, no single man with no credit, no history can go to a bank and borrow the money that's required to buy one of these stores, because it's a chunk of change.
Right. Right.
Tommy, I'm going to sell this to you. I'm going to finance it for you at 100%.
Right.
It's a sweat equity deal for you. You're going to pay me off over X number of years. And, once you own this building, you're not beholden to any man. You don't have to put up with anybody's BS. You're an autonomous person,
right,
driving your own destiny, and it works out great.
Yeah.
Did the same thing at the Anderson Mill store. The woman I sold that store to, she still got another year or 2 left on her note, but when I hired her, she had just pulled into Austin, living in her car, homeless, living in the parking lot. I hired her as an employee. Now she owns that business.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's just, I don't know, I don't know if I'm doing, and realistically, I look back and I think, am I doing that solely for them, or am I doing it for me also? And I think it's a combination of both. I get a huge sense of pride and, maybe it's stroking my ego to think, well, I helped them do that, but somebody did it for me, and hopefully they'll pass that on and do it for somebody else one day.
Yeah.
So
that's what I love is that's one thing about you, Phil. You've always been fair around business. You don't look to take advantage of people. You look to have a fair business. That's a fair business model. And you've always supported people who work hard, who you can, who built that trust. And I know for you, it takes time to build that trust. I tend to be more giving right away, but you are more like most people have to kind of earn that, but you also reward that trust as well. That's what I've seen in relationships with you.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's inspiring, because I tend to, you said something earlier, oh, that's kind of selfish. I think we all have a self-interest. That's why you get into business, to make money and do things. But you've also helped people, like you're just talking about, move up, move along. You've supported people if they can be trusted and they work hard. I just think that's admirable and something we don't see as much anymore because we just don't. And let me ask you something. And as we close up, I want to find out what insight or what message would you want to give to people out there starting a business? What positive thing can you tell them, or a thing you can warn them to look for so they can possibly have a breakthrough in their business as they're starting one?
Trust your gut, do your homework, expect failure. You're going to fail. There's some things that aren't going to work out, but more of them work out than not. Be prepared to be scared to death. It's whatever you think is going to happen. Somebody's going to throw an audible in there, and it'll be fun. But it's well worth rolling the dice, and
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks for being here, and I'm sure we'll have you on another time. But everyone out there, thanks for joining us this week. Phil, again, I really appreciate your insight and sharing your stories. And folks, we will see you on the next episode of A Shot of Inspiration. Until then, best to you. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Shot of Inspiration. If you like this or any of our other episodes, make sure you rate it and share it with a friend. This is Greg Stevens, and we look forward to being with you next time. Until then, be bold, be courageous, and respectfully speak your truth.